not often that we have a couple of topics that are very much top of mind, touching on the same core issue. And the core issue that is being touched on here is the idea of bodily autonomy. What are the two issues that seem to be at a fulcrum at this moment about bodily autonomy? Well, it's what we saw at the U.S. Supreme Court yesterday with a challenge of an abortion law down in Mississippi, and the U.S. Supreme Court hearing arguments and ultimately seeming to indicate, at least from a lot of observers from the oral arguments, that the conservative Supreme Court justices could overturn Roe v. Wade in this case in Mississippi. And if that's the case, then it could mean nearly half the country that has trigger laws in their statutes to essentially reverse having abortion legal in their states. But we won't know about that until June or sometime this summer, whenever the U.S. Supreme Court issues their ruling on this case. So that's an issue of bodily autonomy. Those who want to keep intact Roe v. Wade and the right of an individual, a woman, to make the determination as to whether to carry a pregnancy to its full term, that's an issue of bodily autonomy that people argue is why they have to have that right. It's their body, their choice. But at the same time, we've got employees, and it might be, 5% of employees at one business. It might be 10% of employees at another business. It could be half of employees at another business. They're worried about their bodily autonomy, not dealing with pregnancy and whether or not they have the choice to terminate a pregnancy. They're worried about their bodily autonomy when it comes to what they're told to inject into their body when it comes to the COVID-19 vaccine. So here we are. We've got an interesting dynamic of the idea of bodily autonomy, the ability for you as an individual, as a sentient human being, to make a decision about your health. Two drastically different issues. One, terminating a pregnancy early. The other, whether vaccines should be mandated. 217-629-7970 is the phone number here on the WMAY morning news feed. I'm curious your thoughts. It's not an easy conversation to have, but I think it's one that for some people has them thinking that there seems to be a double standard with the idea of bodily autonomy. And the idea of you having the right to choose what kind of medical procedures you want to do to your body, either being mandated to get a vaccine or being told that you can't have an abortion. And this is obviously something that's touching a lot of nerves because the debates and the oral arguments that happened yesterday in the U.S. Supreme Court very much seems to indicate that they could reverse Roe v. Wade, which would have sweeping implications in other states. Illinois, I don't think you have to worry about it because lawmakers in Illinois, they've passed some of the most liberal pro-bodily autonomy legislation when it comes to abortion in the nation. And in the legislation that they ultimately enacted, it even says even if Roe v. Wade's overturned, abortion's still going to be safe and legal in Illinois. But then you get on the other side, some of those who are pushing for that, they also want you to be required to get the vaccine, the COVID-19 vaccine. So again, this idea of bodily autonomy, we seem to be at an interesting crossroads of the topic and how it's impacting these two major issues in our daily lives. 8:15 now, and the phone number 217-629-7970. Good morning.
I'm not sure that the two things are analogous because I have yet to see someone who gets angry about someone wearing pants, yelling in their face and making another person pregnant in Sam's Club. But I have seen like one redheaded whack job going around getting in people's face, yelling at them for wearing masks. And Sam's Club.
Well, we're not talking about masks. We're talking about the vaccine.
Right. What I'm saying is Typhoid Mary, I think, died for good reasons because she was going around infecting people in a sanitarium. Some of the people in that, if you're cautious and everything else, I've got no problem with people exercising precautions to keep other people from catching any type of diseases that they may or may not have. I mean, honestly, I think it's rude to go into a place where people have no sick days and go in without a mask and infect fast food workers or retail. But the thing is, if you get sick, society is going to help pay for your COVID damage, whether or not it was your fault or not.
Well, and society pays.
Not,
and society pays
to pay for a child.
Well, and society also pays. At least in Illinois, we have taxpayer-funded abortions.
But nobody's going to pay for a child. If some of these people
we've paid for children. We have safety nets in Illinois and across the country.
Have you been in the poorest part of Chicago? People burn freaking parts of their houses for warmth in the winter. In some of the slums,
well, we need to get priority on the resources there because there's a lot of money that's wasted in other areas and it's not going.
If you don't want people to have their children in that, or don't want them to have abortions, then some of these people need to quit being hypocrites and start paying to help make sure that the kids aren't like fifth generation, barely subsistence poverty, because it's been shown, and you know it has, that the greater the poverty, the greater the situation is where people are under stress, the more likely there is to be crime, the more likely there is to be violent crime. It's urban sociology, and it's stuff that you're probably exposed to as a reporter more than most.
But I'm also exposed to, as a reporter, the amounts of money that there is and taxpayer resources that go to these types of things. And we've got we've got a $43 billion state budget. Obviously, it's going to take a reprioritization of those dollars to ensure they get to where they need to go. And that's a different conversation for another day. I appreciate the call. 217-629-7970 is the phone number. We're talking more about the idea of bodily autonomy and an interesting kind of dynamic here where yesterday in the U.S. Supreme Court, you had the oral arguments concerning whether Roe v. Wade is going to be overturned. And then you also have what we've been dealing with for months is vaccine mandates. Again, different medical procedures on different issues, but it seems to really come down to bodily autonomy and whether you have a right to make a decision about what kind of medical treatment you are to receive. Good morning. You're on WMAY.
Hey, good morning, Greg. First thing, if it's not specifically outlined in the Constitution, the First Amendment, Second Amendment, freedom of speech, gun rights, then it goes to the states to regulate. In the Constitution, I can't find anywhere where abortion is listed as one of the constitutional rights, so it shouldn't be a federal overreach mandate. If the state wants to have a very extreme limit of abortion, including late-term abortions, that would be their choice. If they want to outlaw completely, that's the right to his constituents. That's my opinion on abortion. And then real
quick though, and I'll let you talk about the issue of vaccine mandates. It was argued yesterday in the Supreme Court, those advocating to keep Roe v. Wade in place, they said it's in the 14th Amendment Equal Protection Clause that these rights should be enshrined. But again, I just wanted to inject that as that's the argument that those defending Roe v. Wade made in the courts yesterday. But let's talk about the vaccine and bodily autonomy.
And so for vaccine bodily autonomy, I mean, we've learned since the Nuremberg Code, after the Germans did very serious and terrible experimentations on prisoners with when it came to medical research, that nobody should ever be forced to undergo any medical procedure or treatment without their permission. We've had this since the 40s and 50s, and it's been, put into statute and code and laws for various reasons. So the idea that regardless of, and again, we're talking about a cold virus with 99% survivability, to be fair, the idea that someone can come in without any long-term studies and tell you that you're going to be forced to get this, and if you don't, A, you can't travel freely, or B, you can't participate in normal society or even provide a living for your family, that's going against the entire process of liberty and freedoms that are enshrined in this country. And that's why our founders said that we shouldn't have a false sense of security in exchange, for liberties and freedoms, because you're going to get neither.
Right.
And so that's also my point on the vaccine mandates. If you want to get it, I support your medical decision. We shouldn't demonize our fellow citizens for making another choice that they think is right for them.
Appreciate the call. 217-629-7970 is the phone number, talking about this interesting dichotomy when it comes to bodily autonomy. My body, my choice. You see that on protest signs at anti-vaccine mandate rallies, and also at those who want to support a woman's right to choose at rallies supporting that right to choose. So what are your thoughts about this interesting dynamic we see about the idea of bodily autonomy? Good morning.
Good morning. I agree with body autonomy. I really do. My body, my choice. But unfortunately, in today's day and age, we don't have that anymore. I mean, there are things that you have to put in your body just to survive, or even continue to survive, that the government says you have to have, things like that. There's a difference between having an abortion, which is, my body, my choice, and something else. I mean, abortion is one thing.
But Tim, people will counter that it's not just you. When you have, a fetus, and we can have the debate, the philosophical debate about when, life actually begins. Is it at conception, or is it, after the first trimester, or whatever the case may be? But people who oppose abortion say that decision is not just for that individual. That decision is actually impacting a child growing inside the womb.
If you've established when there is an actual child in the womb, then I would say yes. But you need to establish that. You just can't say, okay, you have a fetus and it's not really a person, so it doesn't matter.
And that really is, that's the crux of the Supreme Court case that they heard yesterday was, when is that date? Is it past 15 weeks, or is it fewer than 15 weeks? So, this idea of the conception of life.
What bothers me about the Supreme Court, Greg, is the fact that the Supreme Court, I don't think you can trust at all. They only go based on what they believe personally. They don't base it on the law or anything else.
They're the final arbiters. I mean, that's what they got appointed to do.
No, they did not. They get appointed to uphold the law, not their own.
No, I understand. No, I understand. They get appointed to uphold the Constitution and to slap down anything that goes against the Constitution. But I think your assessment's correct that they don't have to do that, and that's because they're the final arbiters. I mean, they're the Supremes.
Well, I still don't like that.
I know. I hear you. I do too. Listen. The Supreme Court has a bad history of making some bad judgments. I mean, look all the way back to how they treated minorities in the past, decades and decades and decades ago, and slavery, for instance, generations ago. So the Supreme Court doesn't have like a pristine history here. It'll be interesting to see what happens come June. Hey, Tim, I appreciate the call. This is obviously a conversation that, it's not going to go anywhere. We've got the Supreme Court going to make a decision sometime this summer. And then you've got this ongoing issue of vaccine mandates. That's through the courts too, because the Biden administration's getting slapped down by several courts when it comes to requiring healthcare workers that work at Medicaid, Medicare facilities to get vaccinated. That's been held up by the courts. You've got the other mandate for employers over 100. That's been held up by the courts. The mandate for federal employees or federal contractors to get vaccinated, that's been held up by the courts. So these issues of bodily autonomy are very much in the purview of the courts right now. Good morning. You're on WMAY.
Hey, how's it going?
Hey.
As far as the abortion deal goes, it's kind of a different angle. I don't think morally that it's a good thing, but I also think that people are allowed to be immoral, as long as it doesn't affect others. And I think a lot of lines are blurred scientifically when it comes to
or is it a group of cells? Is it a living being? I mean, there's great lengths on one side of the aisle, mostly the left, to push for abortion, which kind of blows my mind. But I'm not a woman, but I just don't get that argument. On the side of vaccinations, what really bothers me is we hear so many people, including local media, that just day in and day out spew blatant misinformation. And what it boils down to is the science isn't clear one way or the other on a lot of stuff. A lot of scientists, a lot of doctors within our country do agree that vaccination is the best key. But we're also seeing a lot of data that shows that even with vaccinations, you're gonna get the virus.
Well, and you just look at the breakthrough data that there is, and the number of cases that people in the hospital, even though it's a lower number, people still get hospitalized, even though they got vaccinated. It's interesting to see these mandates, even though the science isn't all the way there yet. Even the Dr. Anthony Fauci saying we need people to get their boosters so that we can get the data, which indicates to me that they're still compiling all the data to make some kind of grandiose conclusion of sorts. So, hey, everybody, I appreciate the calls. Got to take a break. It is the WMAY morning news feed. And your forecast today, we've got a high of 66 today.